So you're thinking about making the move to Houston and you don't quite know if Houston is actually for you. What makes that a good decision, right? How do you know if Houston is for you? Hi, my name is Aaron. I'm gonna hop right into it in this video. I'm a real estate consultant here in the greater city of Houston, and a lot of my clients right now are relocating from different states, looking for more opportunities and different change of pace and a different lifestyle here in Houston. And they often kind of want to know whether or not I think that they should move to the city of Houston. So in this video, I'm going to hop right into it and give you the good, the bad, the ugly of the things that you should think about before you make that transition to Houston. And the first thing on the list is, are you afraid of traffic? If you are afraid of traffic, if you don't like traffic, if it's a big deal to you, if it's going to be a deal breaker and a stressor to you, Houston is not the place for you. Houston can be an hour away and often is an hour away from Houston. And, prime example of that, me and my wife first moved here in, 2015 or 2016. We moved to the far west side of Houston, known as the Energy Corridor. And it was a brand new apartment. We loved it. Gorgeous apartment. We actually loved where we live. We actually still love that part of town. But at the point in time, we had very physical jobs that were that you had to go to work, and it was in the center of the city. And so, we were only like 13 to 15 miles away from where we were working, from where we were living. And, we had previously came from San Antonio, and we thought, it was about the same distance, and that would only take us like 30 to 45 minutes to get to and from work to home. Even with traffic, it would basically be like 30 to 45 minutes. And so when we moved here, and we thought it would be the exact same thing. It's about the same distance. What can go wrong? And traffic on a day-to-day basis was like an hour there and back. And on days where it had traffic, or if there's a wreck, or if a lane was closed, it could be up to 2 hours. So we're in traffic in our cars. That's not the 40 plus hours. I was doing 50 to 60 hours when I first moved here, in that construction field that I was in. And so in addition to working hard and dealing with the work stresses of that, you had traffic of, 10 to 15 hours a week just sitting in your car. Right. And so now I got a lot of chance to listen to some podcasts and some music, but that's not how I want to spend 10 to 15 hours of my week every week. Pretty much guaranteed. Right. So depending on where you live and where you work and what your lifestyle is, you have to really decide whether or not you want to deal with traffic, and you have to adjust accordingly, because Houston can be an hour away from Houston. And the next thing that you have to kind of think about whether or not this is a good opportunity for you is, are you moving here for work? There's like 20 or 25 Fortune 500 companies here. There's huge companies here relocating. There's Amazon plants everywhere. There's Tesla plants popping up everywhere. These are big, huge energy companies here as well that are giving you a huge opportunity. And that's not including the medical field. We have the medical capital of the whole world here. I think there's a stat that I read that there's like 200,000 medical professionals that live here, and that's doctors, nurses, practitioners, all of those things, right? And so one of the biggest opportunities that you could have here is, if you are moving for work, you will have a greater opportunity to do so than probably most places in the world. It's a super great place to be if you are looking for a different opportunity and a different change of pace from maybe like prime example for us, when I was moving from Baton Rouge. I'm actually born and raised in Baton Rouge. And when I moved to Texas, that was the whole thing, was to get bigger and better opportunities here in Texas. We ended up not being able to get straight to Houston. We went to San Antonio, and there were more opportunities there. And then when we got to Houston, there were even more opportunities here. So if you are thinking about making that move to Houston for work and for opportunities, this is definitely the place to be. Also to add that there's no like income tax here, right? So a lot of my clients that are coming from more expensive places also have an income tax that is associated with making the income that they're making, and they'll be able to save some of that when it comes to tax time here. So opportunities are great. I know a lot of people can either make their same salary or make a little bit more when they transition out here, and the cost of living is a little bit lower here. So it is an outstanding opportunity if it is something that you are thinking about making the move to the greater city of Houston. Really quick, if you're enjoying that content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm doing these kind of videos every week. Let's hop back into the video. All right, the next thing is, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is Houston for you if you aren't afraid of a little bit of a higher tax. Now, this is more so if you're going towards the suburbs, right? So in our suburbs, we have what's known as planned communities. A lot of them have their own schools, their own medical, their own, gas stations, their own parks, walking trails, lakes. They have a lot of those amenities that are within that community. And based on that, you're going to have a slightly higher, not even a slightly, you're going to have a higher tax rate. Let's not joke about it. You're going to have a higher tax rate than I pay. So on my house, that was $300,000 versus your house, that's $300,000 in the burbs. You're probably going to pay several $100s more just based on your taxes. And so some of those tax rates can be as high as 4%, where in the center of the city and city proper in some of these gentrifying areas, like one that me and my wife bought in, our tax rate is like low twos, right? So you're almost going to pay damn near double just to live in a place that's brand new, specifically, and somewhere that's nice and that has been built and developed within the last like 5 to 7 years. You're going to pay a fairly high tax until the mud bonds that are associated with that utility district are starting to be basically paid down. You're going to pay a lot in taxes, right? So that's something that you have to be prepared for. And if you are going and you're looking at a newer home within the last 5 to 10 years, and you're in a community that's a planned community, that's a master plan community that has the amenities, that has the resort style pools, that has the walking trails and all those things, you have to ask yourself if you are prepared to pay a higher tax. If you are, for what you get, then Houston and the surrounding suburbs may be the place for you. But like I said, if you're in the city proper, you should be good most of the time with taxes, just because they're going to probably be in that mid to low twos. But as soon as you get out of that beltway, you're going to start to see those tax rates just creep up pretty fast. So being prepared for taxes, you have to be prepared for that if you're going to make that move to the city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. The next thing that you have to ask yourself is, are you okay with diversity? This is probably one of the most diverse places that I've ever lived. There's something ridiculous like 50 different languages and dialects spoken here. There's just so many cultures, and you can see it in the things that you can do. So many festivals, so many different places to eat, so many different places you can find your tribe, and you can find your niche, and you can find your people damn near anywhere that you want to be. So if you want to be, if you want to do, different lifestyles like hunting, if you want to be into cars, if you want to be into, anime, if you want to be into art, if you want to be into festivals, you can get all of that kind of diverse lifestyle and diverse types of people. If you love Jamaican food, if you love Chinese food, if you love Indian food, it just goes on and on and on. If you love soul food, if you love seafood like crawfish and things that I love, right? Being from Louisiana, if you want any of that stuff, you can get those flavors here. And the diversity of people, things, and places that you can go and call your own and make your own tribe is one of the things that I love at the absolute most about the city of Houston, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So if you are afraid of diversity and want things to be a little bit more of a monolith, I don't think that Houston is gonna ride well with you, because it is one of the most diverse places that I've ever lived, and it's probably one of the most diverse places on earth, especially in the United States. I can't speak for the whole world, but in the United States, it's definitely one of the most diverse and international places that you can be. So if you're afraid of diversity, you don't want to come here for sure. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm doing these kind of videos every week. Let's hop back into the video. The next thing is, if you are not a fan of construction and constant development, Houston is not gonna be your city. So that you have to ask yourself, we've basically been in a construction zone in our community since we've been here. So 2 years, and this new home around us, they've put up like 20 different new communities, townhome style communities that are similar to ours, but are basically within walking distance. So we're basically constantly in, a state of watching our tires for nails, or having to go to Discount Tire to get our cars checked out. I'm also, like I said, I'm a real estate consultant, so I'm also always in new construction. So just seeing how these places are popping up and just kind of coming out of nowhere and just being developed at the speed that they're being developed. And it just seems like you turn a couple corners one week and that was an abandoned house on a big lot of land. You come up the next week and there's a sign there by a developer. You come there a couple weeks later and they're already doing the infrastructure for the houses, right? And it is constant development in the residential side, constant development in the commercial side. You hit a couple turns and you're going to see some Costco's and HEBs and things constantly popping up. And roadway construction also, like one of the biggest killers here, we already talked about it, is traffic. And you'll have major intersections and major sections of interstate that are closed for months, weeks, feels like years at a time, are always under construction, right? So this is definitely a place that is going to be constantly under development. And that's something that you have to feel like, if you don't want to be around that, if you're not feeling like you want to constantly be in a construction zone, this is not going to be the place for you. This place builds like no one builds. I've been in a couple places in my life. Louisiana's not like it. San Antonio wasn't like it when I was there. Houston is constantly under construction, and it's just something that you have to deal with and you have to adjust if you're going to make Houston your home. The next thing that you have to ask yourself is, if you're going to make Houston your home, are you okay with gentrification, right? One of the things that is, I've never witnessed like anything that I've ever seen in my life, in the few places that I've lived. Houston is one of those places where it is here today, gone tomorrow. Something's brand new on top of it. We don't have zoning. So one of the things that you see most often is that there is a proximity to the haves and have-nots of the world that you'll see like nowhere else. Maybe up north. I kind of witnessed this feel with when I was visiting a friend in New York, where you could have like a restaurant or a deli here, then you can have a kind of cruddy apartment on top of it, and then right next to it you can have this glorious looking kind of townhome right next to it. And it was just the no zoning of it all kind of sets this tone where you can see those that aren't quite doing as great, a business owner, and those that are kind of doing super awesome. And as I sit in my house right now, this was definitely an older piece of land that had an old house on it that was knocked down, and then the developer put 20 of our townhomes on it. And so we are in the middle of the Independence Heights kind of area, and it's a transitional area, probably one of the best buys that you can have for the value and for the money and what you get and how close you are to the actual heights and the loop. Outstanding location. I'm glad we bought it. But we are in a place that is gentrifying, and with that comes issues. A couple weeks ago, there was like a shooting that was pretty serious, and a couple people got killed. And that's like within walking distance of my house. On the same side of that, if I turn the other way, because there is no zoning, I can walk to $1 million community. And so throughout the city of Houston, there's just pockets upon pockets, and we're talking Fifth Ward, Sunnyside, Edo, Midtown, all these places that basically hug the inner loop that everybody kind of covets in the city of Houston. There are tons of pockets of places where you can see that at one point in time the values dropped for whatever reason, lack of understanding and an appreciation for home ownership and property ownership. The area becomes depressed. A developer then sees that, finds it, buys that land, and then basically pushes the old tenants out for the most part. Now, there are a couple of developers that do it right and, make sure that the people that were there before can stay there and it is still affordable. But for most people and for most developers, it is basically a money grab. So if you can't afford to be there now, you're going to have to get up out of here, right? And so that's kind of hard to see. But it's hard to avoid here in the city of Houston. I understand it, being in the real estate space is one of those things that I've grown accustomed to, and I just kind of see it, and I can see the signs of when something's about to happen around me now that I'm in the real estate space full time. I can see when something's about to happen, and it's interesting just to see how fast it turns here in Houston. So if you are not up for gentrification and what that looks like in the city of Houston, I don't think that Houston is going to be for you, because that thing is happening everywhere. All right, the next thing is you have to be okay with the fact that that there is flooding here, right? And so now I don't want you to be freaked out. You know, me and my wife, we've lived here for going on 8 years. We have never been personally, our house has never personally been flooded, but there are places here in the surrounding suburbs and around the city that you have to, it's really a serious thing, right? There's basically, if you look at our map and you zoom in on all of our suburbs, so if you're going like Humble, Atascocita, all the way down to over to Katy, you're gonna see little lakes and streams and creeks and things that basically just shred all the way through all of our suburbs, right? And because of that, everywhere you go in a suburb is basically going to be at a higher risk of flooding than most places in the city of Houston. And then there's in a couple places in the center of the city of Houston where there's a bayou that basically cuts through a lot of some of our affluent neighborhoods here. So depending on where you live, flooding could be a huge issue to you. And you know, in Harvey, a lot of these places got decimated by the flooding. And then Harvey also taught us that even places that weren't in flood zones and like serious flood zone ratings could also flood if Houston just takes on a bunch of water. Houston is not made to get hard rain for more than an hour. It's just not meant for that. And so even if your house doesn't flood or your neighborhood doesn't flood, if we get a heavy rain here, there's the likelihood that some roadways are going to get closed, or that you're going to not be able to basically leave your neighborhood depending on where you live, because flooding here is just so, it's a real thing. And with so much development and so many green spaces that are being taken over, and you're just basically making these concrete bowls to put new construction or to put that new development, we don't have a lot of relief in some of these places. So if we get a heavy rain, we're basically just pouring that rain into a concrete bowl, and then you just get what you get. So you're going to get some interstates. 288 is probably one of the worst, where if you're down south and you need 288, that's probably one of the highest risks that I've seen since I've lived here a couple times. Even over the last couple years, on not like super major rains, but 288 or a couple lanes from 288 were shut down, or you couldn't take a certain exit because the exit had flooded. I know in some of these places in Spring and Humble kind of areas, some of those kind of same interstate sort of situations where, you know, water was up to the curb or above the curb, and you see these people trying to drive these nice cars around and or through the lane and just flooding their cars out. So that kind of thing happens more often than not here. And if, like I said, if it's not a devastating thing where your house is being flooded on a fairly consistent basis, if it rains here, you're going to be inconvenienced in some way. And that's likely in the form of street flooding. So you can't move here and be like, I'm going to avoid flooding at all costs. It's not something that you can do. Houston and the surrounding suburbs just aren't built to withstand heavy rain. And so you really have to ask yourself if that is something that you are comfortable with before you make the move to Houston. Because if you're not, Houston and the surrounding suburbs just ain't going to be for you. And I'm going to be honest about that. If you're still here, I'm going to assume that you're liking the content. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm doing these kind of videos every week, giving you the good, the bad, the ugly of what it's like to live in the city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. Let's hop back into the video. And the last thing that you kind of have to ask yourself if you are ready to move to Houston, and this is kind of more of I don't want to say it's a new thought, but it's something that I have to think about more and more with the decisions that me and my wife make as far as where we're going to move to. Are you going to be okay with the crime rates and the crime stats that you see here? And this is, you know, I think right now, I saw a stat the other day on the news that Houston has like more murders than Chicago. And that's something that I would have never thought would happen here. Now, this is a big city. You know, there's every stat that you could have for crime, assault, all those things. We're going to be top 10 just because of the amount of people that are here. But to have the aggressive crimes that I'm starting to see more and more and more here, is one of those things that you have to really ask yourself. If you're coming from somewhere that maybe doesn't have that kind of a lifestyle, or doesn't have this many people, and doesn't have this level of aggression, you got to ask yourself, are you okay with living in a place that is like that? And because of some of the things I mentioned earlier, like the no zoning and all of those things, you're going to be in situations where even if you are in what is considered a good neighborhood, you are very close to a neighborhood that maybe is a little bit more depressed, or not as developed, or not as nice as where you are. Or you're in a situation where you're in a hostile takeover of a neighborhood, kind of like we are right now, where these new developments have kind of surrounded themselves around these old apartments that would have been at one point in time low income or assisted living, or all of those kind of things that are around us. And you deal with the mixing of being in different social economic circles, but being so close together. There's just issues that come with that. And so you have to, if you get on my Ring app and you look at what's one of the nicer neighborhoods here, the Heights, you'll see all the time that there's burglaries. Someone stole my car, someone tried to break into my house, someone tried to, like, you'll just see those sorts of things all the time. And that's not even getting on all of the trafficking stuff, whether that's drug trafficking or people trafficking. There's just so many crimes that can kind of happen here. You have to ask yourself if that is the lifestyle that you kind of want to be a part of. Now, again, me and my wife have been here. We've only had a couple issues, and both of them were in our apartment that we lived in Midtown. We had a car break-in, and then there was a homeless guy that like got into our building and slept on our floor. Those are the only issues that we have ever had. But I know some people that have not been so lucky. I know some people that have been held at gunpoint. I know some people that have been robbed. And it's a part of kind of needing to be on the swivel with living in a big city, and things can happen here very fast. You know, another thing that happens here a lot is road rage incidents, because traffic is so bad, because you're on the road for so long, because this is such a gun-toting kind of state. You have a lot of incidences where, you know, you get into a road rage incident and it ends in a shooting, right? So after this video, if you don't believe me, after this video, Google road rage Houston, and you're just going to see hundreds of stories of people that have had issues out here. You know, we got into an altercation, somebody shot, we got into an altercation, and somebody in the passenger seat got killed. It's just like that kind of thing happens here. And I don't know when that shift kind of happened. It didn't seem as bad when me and my wife first moved here, but it seems like year after year, as we have kind of lived here longer, we start to see more and more of those kind of stories. And so you have to ask yourself if you want to be living in a place where the crime stats seem to be increasing at a crazy rate. Now, I say all that to say this. I love the city of Houston. It has been one of the greatest things that me and my wife have done as far as our lifestyle, being close to family, being close to the family in Baton Rouge, being close to our family here in San Antonio, having the opportunities to do what I know and what I love, which is real estate, and just the opportunities that come with being in a place like Houston. But it definitely has some things that you have to ask yourself if you are ready for before you make that move. How did I do? Did I scare you away? I hope not. If you are needing any assistance and want to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning, noon, or night. I'm your guy. Text message is probably the quickest way to get in touch with me. But if you have any questions about the city of Houston, and if you think or want to know if I think it is the right move and the right decision for you, hit me up. You know, I'm here to help in any way that I can and help you with your transition to Houston. My name is Aaron. I'm a real estate consultant. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.